that has confirmed. So we'll just give people a couple minutes. I think Mark has already mentioned, but I'll say it again just in case, but we will be recording this meeting for colleagues that are otherwise have other commitments or are in other time zones that aren't able to make the meeting. And we'll be doing that regularly throughout the project as well. And as I've mentioned that, I think most everyone here has been added to the Teams channel or has used it on other projects. So we will also be using the Teams channel to have all the documents and have all the stuff related to this project all in one place. And as I mentioned, there's some meetings throughout the project, and you can also send any questions, and Mark and I will be monitoring the chat along with Kevin as well, so that we can answer any questions as they come in. All right, let me go ahead and share the presentation. All right. Shall we go ahead and start, or should we wait a few minutes? I don't know, Mark, if you saw anything in the solutions box of how many people came in.
There was quite a few. I'll admit a few people in, but yeah, let's start. Let's keep to time.
Okay. Okay, so basically we're having this meeting to introduce the project overall and a bit of the structure of how it's going to work going forward, because it is a bit different from the usual item writing structure. So I'll do a short introduction, and then I think I might hand over to Kevin to explain a bit more of the details, if that's okay with you, Kevin.
Sure. Yep.
Right, just looking for you on the meeting. There you are. All right. Okay. So this project is aiming to create a high number of items in a short span of time. So we'll be using a cloning system to create items by adapting some elements multiple times over. And so we'll be walking through an example of what that looks like. Again, the goal is to increase the number of items produced by hopefully boosting efficiency of the production while maintaining the adherence to test specifications, that high level of standard that Apttus has, and the test integrity. And we've also put together suggested functions and topics provided for each item. Each task type will have guiding documents on how best to replicate them, as well as some things to look out for and extra tips and so forth. Okay, so Kevin, I might hand over to you to walk through the overall concept of replacing and adapting, and then the following slides will be those examples that we looked at on Friday, just to give you a heads up.
Okay, thanks, Erica, and hello, everybody. Yeah, so you may not know this fact, but actually this year marks Apttus's 10th anniversary. And within the British Council, we've got lots of congratulatory emails flying around about everything we've achieved, which is a lot. And also, as well as looking back, we're looking forward, and there's increased interest in Apttus on a very large scale, and this leads to the question of version count. And versions are important, particularly well, for security reasons. So if content is leaked, there's other content that can be released. It's also important in terms of the kind of face validity of the test. And it's actually one of the questions that organizations such as ministries will often ask, you know, in initial meetings. They'll ask about version count, and the need for version count, therefore, is increasing. When we started Apttus, because I was in at the beginning, when we started Apttus, we actually just started with 2 versions. of just Aptys General, and we started to the plan was to kind of increase those by 2 versions every quarter, but things changed. That didn't happen. We got other variants were built, other priorities were made, and so we have in some cases been playing catch up recently with the number of versions, and the need for this increased version count is one of the reasons that we're going with this project. And this particular project is focusing on that idea that increasing the number of versions, we're looking for quantity, not necessarily in terms of different versions as much variety, which is why we're going with this cloning idea. The number of versions is not the one reason for that there isn't for this number of versions is it's not because we have individual students taking the Aptys test multiple times and therefore they want to have lots of different versions. That's not necessary. People will take the Aptys test more than once, sometimes, often at the beginning, at the end of a project. But in terms of the vast number of candidates we have, they're just taking the test once. So what we are aiming for, therefore, is to increase the version count in a response to a specific project at the moment and a possible upcoming one by trying to produce in as short a time as possible a increased quantity of versions which may not on the face of it have much variation if you look at them side by side, but they represent multiple versions. This is not intended to replace going forward the process of writing versions in the way we have been, but hopefully that this project will help increase the number of example versions also we can share with you and other item writers, and also it will help provide in the creation of these structures, it will help provide some kind of training wheels for novice item writers, because they will be able to use these to kind of create versions from a kind of predetermined set, rather than just giving them a box of Lego bricks. We're giving them, you know, build a Millennium Falcon out of Lego. So it's that different approach, really. So that's the idea behind it. You will have received some communications over the recent weeks from Catherine, and I know some of you have actually kind of been in direct contact with queries about, you know, what's happening with Aptys and the commissioning. Is it changing because we're getting these different communications? We are making changes, and we'll be informing you of more indications of that in the near future. Mark and Erica are helping with this project because essentially what we're being tasked is to increase our output, and therefore we obviously have to have more resources to do that. And so that's why Erica and Mark are working on this one. We're still working together as a team, obviously, and we will in the future be looking at alternative approaches as well. So that's really some of the background to why we're doing this. Okay, Erica, I think that's.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Did you want to explain this bit, or should we go through the example, the examples of the A1 reading?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think it's connected. It's going. There we go. Okay. Okay, so as we've mentioned, we're going to be working on base items and adapting them as we go through. So as Kevin mentioned, the item at the face of it is going to kind of look different, but we might not be changing that much depending on the task type. So the variations for each adaptation will change depending on the task, but in general, we're looking for potentially 3 changes in the input text and 3 changes in the options, to give it enough variation so that it looks like a different item for candidates when they encounter it, especially in those that are taking the test multiple times. And we have some just suggested areas like around concrete information, around names, times, locations, you know, the focus, the topics, and then possibly also changing the order of the targeted text. And so what that looks like in practice would be, here's a sample of an A1 reading item, which is a close task. So you'd be starting with a base item. Okay, I'll give a second just to skim it. Okay, everybody's familiar with this task guide, I assume, yeah. And then to adapt it, we've highlighted the changes here on the screen. So the easy changes that you can see are the names have been changed and some vocabulary in the input text here. So changing the time, changing an adjective here and there. And then also we've made changes in the options as well. Have you got anything to add, Mark, or shall I go on to?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, as we're moving forward, remember, it's not just about making changes for change's sake. We're keeping the integrity and the function of the complete task. And if you go back to when you can review those previous samples from Kevin, you want to think about how you're either changing the focus, either from being the verb or the object of the sentence and vice versa, but also being mindful of the elements that we're trying to avoid. We don't just want to just focus on collocations or get down into the grammar. It still has to function as an item. So you have to, even at the A1 level, read across the whole sentence to understand the concept. Let's have a look at the next one, Erica.
Yeah. So then again, working from that same base sample, here is the next iteration with the changes highlighted in green. And we've also kept the original changes highlighted in yellow, so they're kind of tracked throughout, so you can see where you're changing. Again, early changes, the first changes, names, times, changing city to town. Those changes are not changing how the item functions, as Mark just mentioned. And here we've got, again, 3 changes in the input text and 3 changes in the options as well.
And you notice this color change. It's a very simple thing. It's going to be really useful for yourself that once you've got your base item, you make those adaptations, you track the changes that you've made. Also, when we do a bit of peer review and peer checking, it's easier for a person to look over the item and see where those changes have been made and see if it kind of makes sense. Yes, Gary.
Sorry, I'm being stupid. I can't see what are the 3 changes.
So
why is it 3? It looks like more than that to me.
What we said is, excuse me, when we're looking at actual what are the options and distractors, we were aiming for about 3. So if you look below, we've got sentence 1, 2, and 4. Those options have actually changed. The distractors have changed. And then previously up in the text looks different because the salutation, the person it's to and from, has changed. We swapped out city to town. We changed the order because in the previous one, early was a missing word, but we've now changed that. So early is fixed in the sentence, but the gap is missing. And again, once you go back and review and have a bit more time, you'll see how elements, and it's just our way. And what we're looking for you as an item writer is also to kind of craft as much variation as possible. You may have more,
but it's not. It seems like more than 3 changes. Is that?
So yeah, what we meant is a minimum of 3 in options and distractors, and within the actual kind of surrounding language.
The minimum rather than I was thinking it was 3. Okay. Thanks.
Well,
Sorry.
it's also a recommended guideline. As we've kind of put this example together, we thought 3 was doable to do, and then you can still think of more. And when you get to the next one, might be able to see, we were kind of exhausted with how many changes we could do without changing the core function of the item itself. So it's recommended to make 3 changes in the text and the options, just to make it different enough of an item without compromising the integrity of the item itself. So this is the 3rd example, and we would recommend that you replicate the item 3 times. However, if you can keep going, feel free to keep going. It's kind of up to you, but this is just from our experience creating the samples that this is doable, basically. So this is the final example. We the 3rd item, and you can see that these changes are tracked in blue.
Question from Simone first.
Hi, yeah. When you say it's adapted 3, you mean you've changed it? You've made one copy of it with 3 groups of changes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, sorry to say this, but for A1 items, wouldn't it be easier just to write one from scratch, because they're so, do you know what I mean? Sorry, that's just.
Well, you're right. What we're going to be doing, yes, in essence, and if you would love to, Simone, we'll put your name down for we've got about 2,500 A1 items to be written, so your name's gone on the list. But the idea is we're moving forward. We're going to try this approach because we're going to go through A1, A2, but when we get up to B1 and B2, again, because we're taking the best and brightest of our item writers, which is you guys.
I was sort of thinking, but mostly for A1, I can see how for slightly like A2 items, a little bit higher, I can see how this would be more speed up the process. I was just thinking for A1 itself, they're so like, they're just a few words as they are. So you change it, it's almost a total rewrite what you've got there. So yeah.
Well, the approach every week is going to change, and when we do get to the higher levels, the B1 and B2, as item writers, you're going to create these templates. So you're going to be creating the templates that are going to cascade down to others to populate. So you are going to have to think about, okay, how would an item writer do this? But you are right in terms of speed, but that process for me and Erica took us about 25 minutes. So we took a base item, 3 versions, so we've got 4 in total. It took us about 25-30 minutes. Just thinking about, okay, what can I do to change this?
Yes, okay. So slightly
Martin?
quicker than it would take for an original to be written.
Martin, you had a question?
I did have a question, but it's been answered. Thank you.
Okay.
And can I apologize for arriving late? I confused GMT with BST.
No problem. That's partly my mistake.
Yeah, could I just come in here just to piggyback on what you were saying, Mark? Is that this is very much this project is it's also a kind of proof of concept. We're not 100% sure it's going to work. So one of the other things that will be very useful would be kind of ongoing feedback to say, well, actually, you know, I was following your instructions, but I came across this issue, or this wasn't working, or have you thought about doing it this way round or something? So, you know, we're very happy to engage with any kind of feedback in that way.
So we're using this A1 reading task as an example of how it might work, how we can replicate items as quickly as possible, again, without sacrificing that integrity of an already approved item, and how we can increase the production as much as possible. If you have a different way of working that can produce many items that can pass the quality review, we're again, open to that suggestion as well. And then we'll explain a bit more in detail of what that might look like for the project going on. We've also provided in the materials, you will also be provided with a little, don't know what you would call this, a little matrix of for each task type. So this is for reading A1 close. We've got the functions and topics on the left, and then potential context that you could write items for spread out across the different columns. This will also be available in the Teams channel. And what you would do is go in and see under each box, there's a blank space, and you would go ahead and claim an item, 2 item writers per topic. And so that way we're making sure that we're covering a wide range of contexts as well. We do recommend that you start with a base item that has already been accepted and you know, pushed on into live testing. So if you've got base items to start with, that's a great starting point. And if you want to replicate from there, otherwise, if you'd like to start from scratch, you can use this matrix as well for ideas. We're open to either way of working.
Yes, and
maybe
also
step-
just if I could just add, I mean, coming back as well to Simone's point about, you know, that at A1, A2, I think in a sense this is kind of a bit like a bell curve where sort of the middle ground is the kind of sweet spot for creating the sort of templates where you can really sort of come up with something that would you would be able to produce, you know, 20, 30 versions from a single one. At this lower end, you're limited, of course, partly you're limited in terms of the Lexis that you can use. You know, that's a limitation. I've actually been working this last week on advanced content, and because we had a bit of a shortfall in some of the listening items, I was actually creating sort of listening items at sea level using this kind of approach, and it does work, but in a slightly different way. That, you know, so there's a kind of that this approach is going to be taking away some of the decisions that you have to make, and which often are time consuming, like sitting down and thinking, okay, what context am I going to use? How am I going to come up with that? Or what am I going to write about? Whereas those kind of creative decisions are being taken away, but you're being given other creative decisions. Kind of, how does this Rubik's Cube of a template actually fit together? So it's a different approach, I think.
Great. Okay. So next one, Erica. So just to keep you all in check, rough timeline. We're going to try to focus on a particular skill, whether it's reading or listening, and a CFR level each week, so that we're kind of all in the same environment. We are still aiming for that rough approximate of 8 hours a week. We are going to have, as Kevin said, we're going to have a weekly kickoff meeting or a focus meeting to start. We are going to also have time to review items so that we'll check it in a PS system. And we're trying to wrap this all up by the end of August. And as Kevin mentioned, it's a proof of concept. So we are really going to be appreciating your feedback as we go along, things that work exceptionally well, additional ideas that could enhance the project, and then hopefully September onwards, Kevin might be able to roll out the same concept, but for another variation or for item, especially where we're growing our exams market in the FET, the Foundation English Test, which works at the lower CFR level. So loads of really good opportunities here. Erica.
All right. And then one last bit, which is slightly different, given this is a specialized item writing project, is the invoicing. So this will also be available on Teams later today as one of those tabs within the channel. It's basically just a record keeping survey to support your invoicing for this project. You can complete it either on a daily or a weekly basis. And there's a screenshot here to the right of what it actually looks like. So when you click on it, you just enter in your full name, and you'll just be recording either today's hours only, if it works best for you and your own organizational style to record them on a daily basis, or total working hours for the week. And you just put those in, round to the nearest full hour. And then you can submit that to us, and we will put together the invoice, send it to you for confirmation and review before it gets sent to finance at the end of each month. So rather than waiting for all of the items to go through the review and acceptance process, here we're tracking hours and getting paid on that hourly basis. Gary, I think you had a hand up.
Yeah.
Martin did as well, I think as well, but
So yeah, originally we were saying 8 hours, but now you're saying that it could be some other number. Is there a sort of maximum, minimum, or how does that work?
there is no maximum minimum. We looked at the volume of work and really, you know, with the meetings and the review and other things, we have volumes to produce. So if you like Simone and she loves absolutely to do everything all A1 and can produce 1 million of them, brilliant. Keep going as much as you can do where you're kind of keeping the content quality and everything like that. You record the hours. Some people obviously have got other commitments in terms of family and time and travel that comes up over the next couple of months. So yes, it may reduce the availability, and there will be times when we get into those B-level items where they are going to be more intense. To create the framework, to create the template and everything else is going to be a bit more time intensive. So we've kind of pegged it at this average, Gary.
Okay, and do we include meetings as part of that?
Yes,
time?
you do.
Yes. Yep.
Including this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
I had a question. This is Martin.
Hi, Martin.
Like other people, I was anticipating at some stage having a short summer holiday. Can we step out of this for a couple of weeks and step back in again, or do we have to commit to being there all the time?
Nope.
Yep, you can step in and out. Some people have already given us dates, a range of dates that they are unavailable. Because each week is having a different focus of the tasks, we're hoping to kind of make it not modular, but a bit compartmentalized so that you can do kind of chunks and then step out if needed. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take this up with you personally, Erica. Thank you.
Sure. And I think there were 3 other hands that popped up.
I think got
Not sure.
Elizabeth. You're on mute.
So go ahead. Now we're just on questions. Yeah.
You can just unmute yourself, anybody.
Yeah, that's fine. Will we all be writing at all levels, or will we be able to request which level we write at, or does it start at lower level and move up to the upper levels?
We're going to start at the lower levels, and we're going to invite you to participate. If you're like, if Martin said he wants to take a holiday or a break, you might not be around for that, of course. But we're going to try to move through because, like Kevin said, there is a sense of getting how it would work for a clone for yourself, how you could replicate, and then how, as experienced item writers, you could produce something that others who are less experienced could pretty much pre-populate. So we are going to go through, yes, we're going to go through the CFR levels. We're going to focus on listening and reading predominantly. We may focus or venture into grammar and vocab.
Yeah, okay.
And that's also what those weekly meetings will be, kind of like this one, where we walk you through the example and what we think the replication cloning process is actually going to look like. In some cases, especially for the higher level items, we might be having one group of people working on the actual template, the actual item with highlighted areas to replace and swap out, and then another group doing those replacements. But it kind of depends on the task, and so that will be introduced at each week.
Do you have any idea what time of day you'll be scheduling these weekly meetings?
We'd try to aim for this regular slot if it works, but again, if there's a consensus that people want like first thing in the morning or a bit later on, Martin, that's fine.
Well, first in the morning, obviously, it depends on where you are. I am quite a lot of my time in South America.
Thank you.
Well, I work out there instead of working out here, but I still work. What was I going to say? So that is 4 or sometimes 5 hours behind. So a 9 or 10 o'clock meeting for UK people, it's not so cool for people in South America. If the meetings were scheduled midday or afternoon, it'd be fantastic.
Sure.
All right. What we can do is put a survey together of possible meeting times for something to be regular. Do keep in mind, though, we will be recording them, and Mark and I will also be available on that Teams channel to monitor for any questions that come through. And you can always email us as well. And
I want to impose my view on everybody. I just wanted to.
no, it's a good point. And we would like to have the highest amount of highest attendance as possible in the regular meetings.
And if push comes to shove, Martin, I mean, the people like Tina and Tony that run the Aptis, they're champions. They do the same thing. They run a morning session and an afternoon session. And if we've got an even split, we can easily do that. You know, it might be only half an hour, 45 minutes of our time, whatever works for people, because you want to feed back in there.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks, Kenneth.
I can't tell if new hands are up or if old hands are up.
I think Simone's still got a hand up because she's writing all the A1s. That's what she's put a hand up for. It's noted, Simone. You're getting all the A1s. Oh, Eleanor.
Hi, yeah, I put a question in the chat. I don't know if you've seen it. When Erica was talking about working from base item, it's just to check, do you mean an item that we've already written and had accepted, or will there be like a bank of items that we work from?
Yeah, it would obviously it worked well from something that you've produced before. We're not at the stage going to give everybody a free for all. So if you've got something that's been accepted, bear in mind that Aptis General is the exact same specification as Aptis for Teachers Revised, which we're working towards, apart from that extra teacher flavor, or, you know, the scenario. So it's exactly the same specifications. So if you've got a previous accepted A1 that you think that could fit that model, by all means. If you haven't, start from scratch. If you need a bit of inspiration, we can just borrow something from somebody else. Because again, we're not on per item. We're just trying to produce volume and content here, and variation. So again, use the chat, use the communication channel, and feel free to request something to start with if you want, Eleanor.
Okay. And my second question.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Eleanor.
No, my second question was probably a bit of a stupid one, but we only write items at the levels that we're trained at. Because, for example, most of us are either lower level or higher level, I understand. So we're only in the project at the level that we've been trained for.
Okay. Well, here we've invited everybody to this. I mean, yes, there are times when we've had possibly a lot of experience at a certain particular levels, but we want you, because it's more about your experience as item writers. And again, when we come into other elements where we might get into the B levels, you know, thinking about vox pops or headings where we have to think about those, we can kind of do a bit of peer work to kind of bounce ideas. But each week, we're going to have some general guiding principles from Kevin and Oslam, things that we can think about, you know, the things to avoid, the things to remember, you know, and that will help guide the right principles. But we would more than welcome you where you can to just participate in all levels. If you feel that you can't, if you feel it doesn't really fit, if you want to go on holiday with Martin, just take a break 1 week.
And I think also, Kevin,
house in Patagonia, everybody's welcome.
I think Kevin also mentioned that potentially for those higher level items, we might be doing a different structure where we do have people that are trained on those higher level items writing the templates, and then others kind of using that as a training wheels exercise to, you know, mix and match, jigsaw the item to do the adaptations as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
So I'm just conscious of the time. Hopefully that provides an overview of the project and the structure that we're going to be using going forward. Again, everybody is in the Teams channel. We'll keep all of the information there. And it's very much a test case, a proof of concept, if you will, to see how this structure works going forward. So we invite your feedback each week, and each week will be slightly different. And I think what we're aiming to do is to upload the documents and guiding information for reading A1 items this week, just so that you can kind of get a feel for how things are going forward. So that base item with 3 replications is what we're looking for this week to see how that goes. And again, we'll post all those things later today.
And also I'll collect, you know, some of the questions that we've got. I'll summarize those so that we've got answers in there.
Yeah.
Yes, Simone.
Sorry, yeah, it's this Teams channel thing. I'm not used to it, and I can't actually have Teams on my laptop. It's not modern enough or something. I'm totally not used to using this Teams channel, and I have to actually find the email that you originally sent, Eleanor. No, sorry,
Erica, yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
Erica.
It's fine.
To get into that platform. It's the only way I can get
Maybe
there.
Erica can send a definitive link and we can bookmark the link and then we'll know where to go.
Thank you. That's what I was going to ask for. Something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
We'll
So
do that.
I don't have to
Sure.
go through this. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, so once we do the survey for the regular meeting time, we can make that a bit more concrete so that you've got that. Yeah.
Great.
Great.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, we'll wrap that up there. Thank you everybody for your time. Again,
Thank you.
expect further
Thank you.
communication.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mark and Erica, should we just stay on for a?
We shall. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks,
You guys-
everyone.
You guys
Have a
let me
great-
know if we're in Argentina. Just,
Bye.
you know.
Bye.
Thanks.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Stop recording there. Kevin.